I got your profile for evaluation. So can you please tell me your technical skill set?
Yes, I work in a Java related project where I work on core Java, Java 8, Spring Boot, and the database that I use is MySQL. I work in a finance domain, and I've been working in an IT industry for around 3.5 years. And that means I have 3.5 years working in Java and related technologies. That's my roles and responsibilities.
No, okay. Okay, so we will start with core Java, then we will discuss the questions related to Spring and Spring Boot.
Yes,
So can you tell me what is encapsulation in Java?
encapsulation is wrapping of your data and behavior together into a single unit is known as encapsulation. In Java world, we can think of class as that unit where we wrap your instance variables and your methods together in a single entity, and that is known as encapsulation. Consider an example of employee class where I can have instance variable as salary. I can have instance variable, I can have instance method as get salary. So I encapsulate the instance variable and the instance method together into class. This is encapsulation in Java.
Okay. What is abstract class in Java?
Abstract class is used to achieve abstraction in Java. And whenever you mark your class as abstract, you mark it as public abstract class car. Car is an abstract class, and Audi or Hyundai or Maruti is a concrete class. That means abstract class can have abstract methods, and the class that extends your abstract class has to provide the implementation of those abstract methods. So that is abstract class. You cannot instantiate your abstract class in Java.
Okay. Okay. So do you know inheritance in Java?
Inheritance, yes. If there's a parent-child relationship where we can say there is a parent class and there is a child class which extends your parent class, this is known as inheritance. And in terms of Java, it is known as superclass and subclass. So if there is a superclass and subclass, we can achieve inheritance using this thing.
So what are the types of inheritance available in Java?
The types of inheritance is single inheritance, where your child class extends from your parent class. You have only one level. This is known as single inheritance. Then we have multi-level inheritance, where your child extends from parent class, and again there's a grandchild which extends from your child class. So there is a level of inheritance. You have three levels here: one, parent, child, and grandchild. This is known as multi-level inheritance. And multiple inheritance is not supported in Java. You cannot extend a class from two classes. That is not allowed in Java.
So why multiple inheritance is not supported?
By definition, Java is a simple language, and if we try to support multiple inheritance, it adds a lot of complexity into implementation. So that is the reason it is not supported. There's one more reason where the same method being present in two classes. Class A, there's a print method. In class B, and there is a print method. And suppose class C extends from class A and class B, then class C does not know which print method to override. Is it from class A or is it from class B? And the implementation becomes more complex. So that is the reason Java decided not to support multiple inheritance.
Okay. So which version of Java you are using? Is it Java 8?
I am using Java 8, yes.
Okay. So in Java 8, do you know Metaspace and how is it different from PermGen?
Yes. Before Java 8, there was a concept of PermGen, permanent generation, where generally your class, whenever classes are loaded, those are stored in your PermGen before Java 8. And they are never unloaded from your permanent generation. As the name suggests, it is permanent. So in Java 8 and from Java 8, we can say there's a concept of Metaspace, which can load classes. And if you think you have not used some classes for a while, then you can unload those classes. That is the concept of Metaspace.
Okay, fine. Have you any experience on working on multi-threading?
Yes, I have experience. I have worked on multi-threading as well.
Okay. Can you tell me the life cycle of thread?
Life cycle of thread includes when you create a new thread, that means your thread is in new state. And when you start the thread, it becomes eligible for running. This state is known as your runnable state. And when the thread actually runs, that means it gets the actual CPU cycle and it starts running. At that stage, you can say it is in running state. While running, the thread might have to release the CPU cycle. During that time, it goes either into the blocked state or into the waiting state. And when the thread finishes its work, it goes into terminated or completed state. So that means when the thread is created, it is new. When it is running, when you start the thread, it becomes runnable. And while it executes, it is into the running state. From there, it can go into waiting or blocked state. And finally, when the thread completes its execution, it is into the terminate state.
Okay. Let us take an example. I have started one thread. I have thread T1. I have started it by calling start method. Now again, I wanted to start it. Can I do it?
You cannot start the thread twice in Java. That is not allowed. So for the first time when you start the thread, it's fine. But when the next time you call the start method on the same thread, it will result in illegal thread state exception. So that will result in an exception, and it is not allowed in Java.
Okay. Okay, fine. Do you know how to handle exceptions in Java?
Yes, there is a construct of try, catch, and finally. So whatever code you might think you think might result in an exception, you wrap it under your try. So you write try, then your code that might result in an exception, and below that you can handle your exceptions in the catch block. So you can have try block with the code that might result in an exception. Exception is an abnormal behavior of your code or abnormal flow that shouldn't happen but might happen during the runtime. And then you can catch exceptions below the try block.
So is it mandatory to have catch block with try block?
It is not mandatory. You can have either the catch block or the final block, but you should have either of them, either catch or try. You cannot have just try without catch or without finally. At least one should be present, catch or finally.
Okay. Can I have multiple catch blocks with single try block?
Yes, you can have multiple catch blocks with the single try block. And while having multiple catch block, there is one rule that you have to follow, where you have to handle the more specific exception first, and then you have to catch the more generalized exception. That means suppose you are handling file not found exception. So try, then you have to write catch file not found exception, and then below that catch you have to handle catch of exception, where you are handling specialized exception first and then generalized exception below that. That is the rule we have to follow when we are having multiple catch blocks.
Okay. Can you tell me the difference between string buffer and string builder?
Yes. String buffer and string builder both are mutable classes, but string buffer is synchronized. That means it is thread safe, and string builder is not synchronized. That means it is not thread safe. String buffer was introduced in JDK 1, and string builder was introduced in JDK 1.5. When it comes to performance, as string buffer is thread safe, the performance is string builder performance is far better than string buffer performance.
Okay. Okay, fine. Do you know string class in Java, and how do you compare the strings?
Okay. A string is an immutable entity in Java. That means once you create the string, suppose I create the string football, FOOTBALL, football. And even if I try to change it, a new object is created, and the original football object does not change. So that is immutable string. There are two ways to compare the string. One by using equals equals, and the other by using the equals method. So equals equals, just check for your reference comparison, and dot equals, check for your actual content. That means suppose if I have string s1 equal to football, and string s2 equal to new football, new string football, then if I do s1 dot equals s2, it will check the actual content and gives us the result as true. So this is how we do string comparison in Java.
Okay, so you said a string is an immutable entity in Java. So can you tell me how to create immutable class in Java?
Yes, we can have a class, and to create the immutable classes, in my view, I think you can make your instance variables private. That is the first thing. And you can set the value of your instance variable. You can accept the value of your instance variable only through the constructor. You can provide the constructor which accepts the value of your instance variable, and then finally you provide only getters for your classes. You don't provide setters for your classes. So this is how we can make our classes immutable in Java.
Okay, fine. Do you have a knowledge about serialization?
Yes, I know what is serialization. I haven't implemented in my current project, but I know what is serialization.
So what is serialization?
Serialization is where, consider you have an object in your heap, object of type, or suppose OD, and serialization is converting that actual object in the heap to the byte stream. So the object is converted from object representation to the byte stream, and then you can store that byte stream in your files, or you can transfer that byte stream over the network. So that is serialization in Java.
Okay, suppose I have an object, or I have a class, and in that class I declare 4 to 5 variables. But I don't want to convert all the variables into byte stream. So what is the way to avoid a variable so that I should not be able to convert that variable into byte stream? Okay. Is there any way?
Yes, there's a way in Java where if you mark your variable as transient, then while serialization, the JVM makes sure that transient variable is not serialized. So example password is a good example of transient variable, where you don't want to store someone's password into, or convert password into the byte stream and store it in your file or send it over the network. So you can use transient variable where you don't want to serialize some of the instance variables.
Okay, fine. Okay, let us consider I have a string. Okay, you might have idea about palindrome string.
Right? Yes, I have.
So palindrome string means let us consider I have madam, MADAM. So if I traverse it from right to left or left to right, the string remains same. Correct. So can you tell me how to check whether a string is palindrome or not?
Yes, there are multiple ways to check a string is palindrome or not, but I'll tell you one way, which is the simplest way. I have string s1 equal to madam, as you said. What I could do is I could reverse the string using the string buffer or builder APIs, and then compare the original string with the reversed string, just to check if it is equal. And if both strings are equal, then I can safely say that both strings that string is palindrome.
Okay, fine. So you have mentioned Spring and Spring Boot as well. Okay, can you tell me why should we use Spring?
Yes, Spring is a container of beans, but the basic purpose of Spring is for doing dependency injection. Spring does dependency injection for us, and it also has the feature of IOC. So I'll explain why Spring. Suppose you have one object and it has its dependency. For example, consider a bank account object, and bank account object has dependency on some other object. That means whenever you are trying to create a bank account object, what Spring will do, Spring will try to find all its dependencies and will inject it for you. So you don't have to inject all the dependencies into the bank account object. Spring will do this for you. And as the object creation and dependency injection responsibility is given to the Spring, and it is not done by the actual developer. So this is known as inversion of control, where you give the responsibility of creation and wiring to Spring. This is inversion of control.
Okay, fine. Can you explain the life cycle of your bean?
Yes. So bean life cycle is, there are two important methods that I feel should be in the bean life cycle. One is init method and one is destroy method. You can do this configuration by XML, where you can, while creating, while defining the template for your bean, you can have init hyphen method and specify your init method. And similarly, destroy hyphen method and your destruction method. Or you can do it programmatically using your initializing bean interface and disposable bean interface. So these are the two important lifecycle methods of your Spring Bean.
Okay. Do you know transactions in Spring?
Yes, transactions in Spring can be handled using two ways. One is your programmatic way, and one is your declarative way. In the programmatic way, you have to write the series of steps or code, you could say, where you have to commit your transaction and or roll back your transaction programmatically. That means you have to write code to achieve either the rollback or the commit. And there is one more way, which is declarative way. Declarative way is widely used, where you write a template in your XML, what should happen. And whenever there is a runtime exception during your transaction, then Spring automatically rollbacks that transaction. So whenever there is any runtime exception, Spring finds it. There was an exception, there was a runtime exception, and Spring will roll back your transaction automatically for you. And if there is no exception, then Spring will go ahead and commit the transaction. So these are the two ways, programmatic and declarative.
Okay, so let's move to the Spring Boot. Can you tell me, let us consider I have to create an application. I'm going to create a CRUD application. Okay. Can you tell me step by step all the process to create a Spring Boot project from the scratch and try to store some records into your database? So can you tell me the steps?
Okay. The first step is to create the Spring Boot project itself using, there is something called a Spring Initializer. You can go to spring.io and create your project there. There you have to give your artifact ID and your group ID along with the Maven dependencies. This is the first step. You go to Spring Initializer, you write your project name, artifact ID, group ID, and you add all the Maven dependencies. Once the project gets created, you can download the project from Spring Initializer, and you will have that project on your local machine. Then you can import. The second step is to import the project into your IDE, which is your Eclipse or IntelliJ, whichever is your favorite editor. Then once I import it, I can go ahead and suppose I want to store the user entity into my database. Then I'll go and create a user Pojo. That will be the first step. The next step will be I'll create the REST controller. I'll create one controller and mark it with the REST controller. In that, I'll have different methods: post mapping, put mapping, get mapping for the user. To create a new user, I'll use post mapping. To update the user, I'll use put mapping. So that is my REST controller. From my REST controller, I'll call my service, which is I'll annotate my class service class with @service annotation, and I'll write my business logic into the service class. And from there, I'll call my repository, which I'll write a repository class, and I'll implement that with either JPA repository or CRUD repository. And I'll call the respective method from my service. I'll call the respective repository method from my service class. And to specify, now let's move to database. How to specify database properties? There is something called as application.properties file or application.yaml file, in which you can specify your database string, and So that's about end-to-end flow: REST controller, service class, repository, and then your database string. So this is how I'll design my Spring Boot application.
Okay, so you mentioned you need to have some dependencies. So can you tell me what are the starter dependencies in Spring Boot?
Correct. Starter dependency is where there is a set of dependencies which is essential for running your Spring Boot application. That means there are set of jars that are required to initialize and run your Spring Boot application. Those are known as starter dependencies. And starter dependencies, the benefit is you can have all the transitive dependency of the starter dependency. So that means suppose if your Spring requires logging, then logging jar is also pulled from the Maven. So you don't have to worry about all the transitive dependencies. So that is starter dependency. That is starter dependency.
Can we change the port of your Tomcat server?
Yes, you can change the port of the Tomcat server in the application property. In the application .properties file, there is a specific property known as server.port. So you can write your required port there. Server.port equal to 8080 or server.port equal to 8090 something. You can change it.
Okay, but if I don't want to run my application on Tomcat server, is there any way by which I can run my application on a different server other than Tomcat?
Yes, you can change the embedded server from your Tomcat to Jetty. There is a way to have Jetty configured, and that is also done using application.property. There is one property which you can use to refer to your Jetty, but you have to make sure you also include the Jetty dependency in your pom.xml file.
Okay, fine. Do you have any idea about Swagger? Have you used it in your application?
Yes. Whenever we write some REST APIs, at that stage we have to add documentation of that REST API, and we use Swagger for documentation purpose. And then Swagger actually runs on one URL, and then we give that URL to our clients of the API. So Swagger is used for documentation in our project. That's about documentation.
Okay, fine. That is all about Spring Boot. Do you have any experience on working with the database?
I'm working on MySQL database currently in my current project.
Okay. Can you tell me what is primary key?
Yes, primary key is a column in a table which stores identifier, and you cannot have duplicate entries in the primary key. So suppose employee ID. So you are trying to insert 1, and then you try to insert 2, and you then try to insert 2 again. So if there is primary key constraint on that table, then you won't be able to insert 2 identifier twice. So that is primary key. And foreign key is where you are referring primary key of other table in one table. So there is table 1 and there is table 2. So table 2 has the primary key, and you are referring your primary key of table 2 from table 1. So this is known as foreign key constraint.
Okay. Okay, fine. I'm done from my side. Do you have any question?
Yes, I just want to have some brief idea about the project that I'm going to work on.
Okay, the project is basically having a technical skill set which is similar to your technical skill set. It will have core Java. We are using JDK 8. Then we have Spring and Spring Boot. And we are using Oracle as a database for backend. So
Okay.
that is all about the project technical skill set.
Okay, and when can I expect result?
I will share my feedback with HR, and then HR will connect with you.
Okay, so that's it. I had only these 2 questions.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Thank you.